In my honest belief, Biden is not in this race right now, and frankly, it is not a competitive race right now. Now, that's not to say that it always will be this way. Things could change, and they certainly would have to change. And the unique problem that Biden has is that he has less with his mental problems. He has less resources to make that happen, less mental resource. And when he tries to use them, there's a random chance, depending on the time of day, that he could have a clip-worthy gaffe that reinforces and reminds of the narrative that he is not mentally fit to serve as president or run as president. Now, that being said, is my honest opinion on how things are going so far. I am a strong believer in confronting evidence and confronting narratives that seem to, at least on the surface, or possibly in reality do, contradict what I currently believe. And amongst the wave of red polls, there has been one blue poll that has received disproportionate attention for being the one blue poll, and it has received some coverage that I would strongly disagree with. So we're going to talk about that today. Now, this poll is from NPR Marist. On the top line, for the head-to-head matchup, it has Biden at 50 and Trump at 48, so Biden plus 2. And for the five-way, which includes Kennedy, West, and Stein, it has Trump at 43 and Biden at 42, reducing the major party candidates' vote share by 13%, which is quite significant. Now, if you remember that short I made, something I said is that the key voter here, to quote myself, the key voter here will be the voter that slightly disapproves of Biden, because there's quite a lot of them, and there's just too many of them to the point where Biden is going to have to win them if he wants to win the presidency. He can't win the presidency with the 40% of people that approve of him and and the uncertainties of whether they approve or disapprove. And those people here, they are three. They are four for Trump, which is quite interesting. The people who disapprove of Trump and Biden, which is also very critical because both of them are very, very much disliked candidates. Neither of them are going to win this election on being liked. Trump also wins them, and as a consequence of that, that shows up in Trump winning independents. The only reason, I noticed that Biden's winning this, and the only reason that is because in this poll, the sample of registered voters in this poll has a 45% approval rating of Biden, which is why he can win while losing the people that slightly disapprove of him and losing the people that disapprove of him and Trump. That 45% sample, unfortunately for Joe, is not representative of how the country feels about him right now. At best, the actual number is 40. And it should also be concerning that in this sample, he still loses a large percent of the vote to these other third parties at this disproportion, at this unrepresentatively high approval. Now, I did see a video on this poll, of course, by Let's Talk Elections, and in which he looks at this poll, and this poll from NPR Marist actually has a better result from Biden than it had pre-debate, which he brings up, and he mentions that this is inconsistent with what pundits are saying, that because pundits and the news is generally saying that as a result of the debate, Biden is much, much worse off in terms of approval, in terms of head-to-head with Trump. And he says, well, this is because it's not the only thing that voters are considering, which is true, and that people have many concerns about Trump and Project 225, and that frankly, they care more about what they concern with Trump than with Biden. Uh, well, As we can see in those who disapprove of both Trump and Biden, that is clearly not the case. As we can see in those who slightly disapprove of Biden, that's clearly not the case. And Biden's gaining in this Marist poll has nothing to do with Trump being more suspected to the point where people do not care about Biden's problems. Trump's favorability has increased in this poll, where if this narrative were true, it would be decreasing. The reason for Biden increasing in performance in most polls is the increase in his approval rating, which he notes, LTE notes, as it is mentioned in the Twitter thread of the poll he sees it in. He's lucky enough to see that. And he says that this is because Democrats have somehow are increasing the numbers of Biden. Now, I do not know why he would say that, because it is contradictory with the previous narrative. Because if the previous narrative were true, which you can see that is not from this poll, then you would not have to have a poll with a good or relatively good or disproportionately good approval rating for Biden to be able to put him over the top. And it completely denies the reality of why that initial narrative is mentioned. When people say, well, people have a lot more concerns about President Trump, what President Trump's doing is going to be much more of grave concern than Biden's mental problems, they're not doing it to answer the question, how can Biden win if his approval rating is climbing several points a month? They're doing it because in reality, it's not doing that. It's at 40 at best. It's stagnating, if not slightly declining. And if we take a look at this poll and we put it against all the other approval rating polls of Biden on Real Clear Polling, then you can see that the closest poll to this poll is 6 points away from it. So you can literally not argue for anything that this is, except that it isn't a huge outlier and it is a denial of reality. In fact, it should be very concerning that Biden, aside from the little details within it, that Biden is only winning it by 2 points in this alternate reality. Nationally, that's as much as Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. And if you took all the little details from the polls, such as the voters slightly disapprove of Biden, the voters who disapprove of Biden and Trump, you would realize that the swing states are slightly more red than national, so those numbers would be even better for Trump in those states. In that short ago, I talked about how those were the reasons why, those aside from disappointing Republican turnout, those were the reasons why Democrats were able to do so well in the swing states. And mentioning that, I said that Biden might do very poorly because those Democrats doing well amongst people who disapprove of Biden is obviously going to be very different than Biden doing it amongst the people who disapprove of Biden himself. And if you look at the current generic ballot polling, and if you look at 2022, the generic ballot polling is actually pretty accurate, pretty on point. The Republicans are doing slightly worse in generic ballot polling, even though they're winning, than in 2022. And there has been some redistricting changes in Democrats' favor. So if those polling numbers are accurate, Democrats would likely edge out the House all at the same time that Biden would be getting killed in the Electoral College. So clearly, Biden is not able to win these voters who disapprove of him the same way that the rest of the party should. And that's another reason why I feel a bit more confident. I feel we should be a bit more confident about this since 2022, because what happened in 2022 was gravely concerning. But clearly, Biden does not have what made them win. Now, back to Let's Talk Elections statement. He also did say some weird thing about voters voting for a new and diverse Democratic Party. I don't know what he's waffling about there. Voter apathy has always been present in the 21st century. Well, right now you can tell that it's at an all-time high. Listen to anyone. People are more distrustworthy of the parties and of the candidates than ever before. You can see this in the candidates' approval ratings. You can see that in this very poll, the third-party candidates take away 13% of the vote share from those two candidates. In fact, that is so significant that I don't know why. I don't think it's honest at all to report the +2 figure as a lead for Biden when the when the third party thing is so significant because it's taking away so many. That is obviously very relevant, and I know the third parties decline over the state of the race somewhat. I believe that overall they'll be more relevant, but we'll see. But those third party candidates are going to be on the ballot. So, yes, they should be counted. And I don't see any reason to discount that part of the poll in favor of the 50-48 number, other than the fact that Biden is leaning in one, and if you look at the other, Biden is not leading, which would leave him at leading in absolutely no piece of data at all whatsoever at the current moment nationally. Now, sometimes the bias of people can be a bit mind-boggling, but the way I see it is that there's people with certain biases, and regardless of what the data says, uh, those people are going to either predict the candidate winning, or in the extreme case, if not, they're going to predict them at least getting much more of the vote than expected. For example, if someone's expected to win an absolute landslide, at the very least, they'll say, okay, we're going to get away with this better. So, damn, I said that pretty poorly. I mean, I hope this video hasn't been too bad with my speech. My speech is getting way better. I'm recording these videos in one take now. But you get what I mean. People with slants are going to either want to predict a candidate winning, or when worst comes to worst, doing a lot better than expected. And it's like a missile finding the way home. It doesn't matter the data. Eventually, they're going to find a way. They're going to find a how as they get to that prediction that they want relative to how things look. And you can see a lot of Republican dictators going a bit crazy with the whole Virginia, Colorado, and Minnesota thing, in my opinion. And you can see people such as Let's Talk Elections. They only have one piece of data that's an obvious statistical outlier. You can't argue otherwise. And they're going to town with it. Maybe not all the way to town because it still has Trump winning, but he's going quite crazy with it. And it's not warranted. And inevitably he will go towards what he wants to predict. I know obviously I am more towards the Republican side of the aisle. I'm going to try and be a bit objective. If things change, I'll report on them. As for now, I have my way of looking at it. I hope my speech, again, said it before, but I hope my speech wasn't too bad. As I recorded this, I know that it did stutter and stumble quite a lot of times. Well, it's going to get better over time, I hope. Goodbye.